Here is why you or your loved one may look different at the end of life. A lot of people have not seen what it looks like when someone is dying. And then on top of that, it's someone you love. So it's hard to see them look so differently. Hence why I like educating about what it looks like when someone's actually dying and why. So why does someone's face change so much at the end of life? Not everyone's face will look different, but more often than not, people's faces will change at the end of life. So let me explain what's going on. The body is changing drastically at the end of life, and sometimes it can happen suddenly. Sometimes your loved one can be up walking around looking the same, and then the next day they are unconscious and not waking up, and they have changes in breathing, and it can feel really scary. People's faces at the end of life can look different, sometimes gradual, sometimes suddenly, and it's usually because of the disease they're dying from and just the dying process in general. So let's go one by one. Their mouth. People's mouths at the end of life will be most likely hanging open. Now, that's happening because these muscles right here that keep our mouths moving and shut when we're not speaking loosen up and they relax. So at the end of life, someone who is in the actively dying phase will have their mouths hanging open because they are so relaxed. Sometimes even they will have their tongues hanging out, which can be disturbing, but again, it's just because they're relaxed. All of these muscles are relaxing, so everything just hangs open. That is normal and to be expected. Now, the tongue. It is important to keep your loved one's mouth moist because if you don't, the tongue can turn very dry and change color. Hence why I try to educate about good oral hygiene or good oral care at the end of life. A lot of times hospice companies will give you little sponges that you can put water on to moisten someone's mouth, moisten their tongue, and that will help with the tongue changes that you might see. Again, do your best. You can't make them look perfect or like they used to look, but just know that it's normal. So changes in skin color is another thing you might notice or see. The skin might look a little yellow in certain circumstances, so a little jaundice, might look a little extra pale, maybe a little blue or even purple or gray. Also very normal. This is just because of circulatory things going on in the body and the body slowly shutting down and changing color. Very, very normal and to be expected. A lot of times people will also look a little gaunt or like sunken in, like their eyes could look a little sunken in, their cheeks could be a little hollowed. That is also because of the process of dying and likely because they have not been eating and drinking, which is also very normal and also a way the body helps prepare itself to die. Another thing you might see if your loved one is not dying what I would call a natural death on hospice, meaning they're dying from a certain disease, but we're allowing the natural process to happen gradually. If they're dying in the hospital or have been in the hospital for a long time, they may actually look swollen instead of sunken. So instead of sunken in and kind of dehydrated, they may look swollen. And that's usually because the hospital gives a lot of fluid that the body can't handle, so the body can kind of swell up. So your loved one might actually look more swollen than sunken if that's the case. Now the eyes. People's eyes look different at the end of life, and here's why. It takes a lot of muscles for me to be blinking my eyes, keeping them open, shutting them. That all takes muscle and brain power. And at the end of life, those things, your muscles are relaxed and your brain is shut off for the most part. You're usually unconscious. So most people's eyes at the end of life will be either partially open, fully open, but not making eye contact, or not blinking. Generally speaking, their eyes are going to look different. Again, very normal, and it's usually just because they are very relaxed. If someone's eyes have been shut the whole time during the actively dying process, and then once they die, suddenly their eyes will snap open. Doesn't always happen, but it does happen, and it can scare a lot of people because they're not ready for it. That is literally just a relaxation of the muscles, which causes their eyes to pop open. Again, very normal. Tears at the end of life. People will often say to me, my loved one had one single tear go down their cheek when they died, or I noticed there were tears in their eyes. Were they sad? Were they okay? We believe that tears at the end of life are a biological process of dying, and it's usually to protect the eyes because the eyes are not blinking like they normally would. A lot of times they're open or partially open, so the eye is trying to protect itself by creating more fluid, more liquid around the eye, and then it'll just gather and then eventually get too much, and then a tear will fall down. So we do not think at the end of life people are having an emotional response. We think it's a biological response to actually help protect the eye. So why do people's eyes change color? So you may notice color changes in the person's eyes because of corneal opacity, which just means that there's like a cloudiness or a haziness over the eyes due to lack of oxygen and blood flow to the eyes. Also, sometimes at the end of life, there's an accumulation of electrolytes such as potassium that can gather up into the eye, causing the change of color. It's important that we educate ourselves about these types of things because people don't know about it. And the more we know about it, the more we understand it, the better we can process it and deal with it when the time comes.